And welcome to MSI Cooldown after, frankly speaking, a ridiculous day of games. We're going to take a moment or two to celebrate RNG's win on day 4. Emily, pretty much as expected, I think it's fair to say. EG a little bit outmatched stylistically, and ultimately RNG picked up the win.
Yeah, and I mean, as we were walking off the desk, Aux said something that I agree with, which is like, if you have two teams that kind of are stylistically similar, the one that is better is just going to have a significant advantage. The Predator Galio coming out of Xiaohu, like, this is, if you just add Camille and Nautilus, it's like the perfect RNG comp.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, they banned away the Camille, they denied the Nautilus, but like, if you think of the iconic champions or the champions that this team leans on, this is everything they wanted and more. And you kind of saw in the skirmishes, super comfortable on these picks, constantly finding these fights. But I have to respect, EG did try to check them, but it just felt like every time RNG had the edge.
That Gala Danny kill right at the bottom, summon a heal, keeping Gala alive. We were screaming backstage. Now, just before we went live, I got informed by Aux that if RNG pick up just one more win tomorrow, they guarantee themselves first place. We'll talk a little bit more about the semifinals in a moment or two. But before that, I'm going to speak to my LPL and my LCS representatives and talk about the LCS versus the LPL MSI all-time head-to-head.
Okay.
So I first saw this spotted out by one of our favorite Redditors and validated with the stats team. Now, I don't know where the graphic's going to come up, but if we go all the way back to MSI 2016, 1-1 CLG RNG, 2017, 1-1 TSM WE. I think you'll see a trend. 2018, 1-1, 3-3. Emily, why did EG let us down? For years and years, it has been a 50-50 win-loss, and today after that game, Danny, Jojo, the crew, they disappointed me.
Wow, that is incredibly harsh.
That's surprising.
I was going to go back to the TL IG and be like, do we count that as a win for TL, or do we count that as a IG, like...
Perspective, half full, half full.
I just can still see those games in my mind.
What blows my mind is I was quite surprised to see the MSI all-time being so, you know, even, quote-unquote, between the regions. I mean, Aux, you are just as shocked as I am.
This graphic's ruined now. This is the last time we can use it, because we had, like, the equal sides. It won't work next MSI.
Live evil. You have let us down. That would have been perfect symmetry had it turned out. All jokes aside, though, I did want to talk a little bit more about some of the other results and some of the other sort of discussions and analytical threads that the two of you introduced. Let's start by talking about Saigon Buffaloes. We had a blueprint for them, what we wanted to see for them to win. They picked up their first win. I think, Aux, I asked you to talk about it in Countdown. Let's watch the game a little bit back and then bring back the key points that we were highlighting.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things was trying to stabilize Froggy and get him out of lane. And I mean, I expected the game to go better if this happened, but I didn't expect it to be this drastic, constantly making these massive plays. And they were so close to taking down RNG, but I think even though they've been knocked out, even though they're not going to go further in this tournament, they have shown how much they've improved and learned from this.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the big thing, the big story of the day has to be BJ and Froggy, right? And how they're working together. Because, like, that is exactly what we want to see. Like, focus mid-jungle, get him out of lane. Like, I've reiterated the entire day, Froggy out of lane, as long as he has some, you know, some resources to work with, is fine. He's just getting him out of the laning phase, because even in BCS, he wasn't the strongest laner. It was about his team fighting.
I mean, it was heartbreaking watching that game. I feel like
so close.
I feel like many people wanted to see the Buffaloes pick up that win, and you know, it could have gone either way, but it was dramatic. It was chaotic. It was quite indicative of many of those games. And as we said, draft creativity. Did we see a lot of that today?
In the final
like the
game.
Shen. Yeah, I like the Shen support for Taki.
Definitely better execution. Froggy didn't necessarily need protecting. Everyone else needed protecting from him. Which I think was the biggest surprise.
I mean, that's the thing. They protected him in lane, and he just paid back so much when it came to after that. And I just love the initiation and the way they were finding their engages, because we talked a lot about this team in group stages as being like an aggressive team and like to pick fights, and you kind of saw that on display today.
Yeah, despite the fact PSG also just lost that game a moment or two ago to Buffalo. Let's take a look at their blueprint. And Emily, talk me through what you saw from PSG. How would you rate their performance today?
Yeah, I think this is still a fantastic blueprint blueprint for PSG. Specifically, I did like the Syndra nod for Bay. Again, it's something that he has been successful on historically in his career. Easy to execute comps with 5v5 potential. And then the most important thing, in my opinion, unified on a hyper carry like the Tristana and Kaiwing on something where he is the primary initiator for the team, because this bot lane has been together now for, I believe, over 5 years, like just the two of them. They work really well together, and Kaiwing in particular is a phenomenal initiator.
And I think, honestly, some of the challenges I had in the Saigon Buffalo game is often Saigon Buffalo were the ones starting the fights, looking for the engages. And I feel like this is a team who work very well when they're the ones picking the fights at their own pace and having multiple initiation tools.
Like we saw them taking down G2 in a pretty one-sided match. The day began...
Is that a big deal? Anyone can beat G2 right now.
There was... Was it... I'm just going to say, Freak had a fantastic joke where he said, PSG can only beat the two worst teams at the tournament. Now, what I did like was, after they took down G2, that started to throw the potential semifinals into a complete spin. Then Buffalo ended up helping sort of repay EG and G2 by taking down PSG. It created quite a stir. But I do think for PSG, still surprising, still difficult, still interesting to see what impact they can have, because now they are the ones playing catch-up in tomorrow's last day of games.
Yeah, so a lot of work for them to do to catch up. It's still possible, but they've, with that loss to Saigon Buffalo, put themselves in a bit of an uncomfortable spot. But I think, the main thing is that we've seen them playing better and learning from that. I think one of the issues against Saigon Buffalo is, like we talked about, how shutting down Froggy is important. And Bay, our main focus is just stabilize things, but stabilizing wasn't quite enough there.
I mean, Syndra was so good in that first game. Honestly, heartbreaking. Okay, now, probably one of the most enjoyable games for at least our broadcast today, and I'm hoping for Ms. Rand as well, is EG's win over T1. I want to take a look at some of the highlights. Take a look at... Do we have the blueprint first? No, blueprint first. Okay, let's take a look at the blueprint. While that's coming... No, it's going the other way around. It's been a long day, everyone. Emily, tell me what made you happy about this.
So what made me happy was their drafting, obviously, right? Like, they seem to have a much clearer understanding of, you know what's winning? 5v5 teamfight compositions. You know what we're playing? 5v5 teamfight compositions. And I think you saw in this win, the exact thing that we want to see from this team, right? Early game was super rough, but when it came to the team fighting, they were able to be coordinated. I would still like, them to have a little bit better handle on those early game timers, but when you have a team fight composition like this, it gives you so many avenues back into the game. And Danny, on something that he is super comfortable on, like in these fights, with impact damage, it was just
Emily,
great to see.
I have a penchant for making some bold statements.
My goodness.
In particular, bold statements that feature Bjergsen, FLICKR. These are things that I really like. So here's what I want to try on you. Tell me what you think when you hear the following. Jojo Pyun, his second game against FLICKR, did something that Bjergsen and Jensen could not.
Well, that's interesting.
Take him down. What does that emote in you when you think of Jojo, when you think of the future, when you think of this EG roster?
I mean, everyone already knows my feelings on starting Jojo. If you watched LCS finals, I kind of popped off on that. I think in terms of going up against FLICKR, there's a reason why he is the greatest of all time, right? It's like you're always going to want to measure yourself against the best. So I guess that's a nice benchmark for him. For Jojo specifically, I'm just looking forward to continuing to see his improvement, because I think he's a phenomenal talent that North America as a whole can look to as his future goes on.
I want to see him in best of fives as well.
And honestly, more impressively, he beat Froggy.
Yeah.
Honestly, you know what?
That stings me. That really stings just a little bit.
No.
Do we actually have the scorecard to come up? Because I know we've kind of jumped back and forth a little bit for the assets. If we can, let me know. And then basically just finish that off before we move on, talking about what we want to see from EG. Were you happy with what you saw, Emily, the Nogs?
I mean, I still think, so obviously we just came out of their second game, right? Which was a massive loss to RNG, where it really looked like, RNG had that game in hand for most of it. The big thing for me is Inspired and Vulcan teaming up, because where I want to see them look better in the early game, a lot of that is on support roams from Vulcan, and then also Inspired having better communication with his lanes, or being able to farm up so that then he's controlling skirmishes.
I think one big concern for me is if EG do make it to the top 4, RNG are looking likely to be first. They will probably pick EG for the stylistic reasons you said, and that's a rough matchup.
It's a really, really rough stylistic matchup.
We just saw that now 0-2 letting NA down with that 50-50 win-loss for 5 years.
A shame.
Okay, Aux, I'm going to turn to you now because T1 have consistently snuck, cheated, tried to brazenly do Baron at 20 minutes. It has bitten him in the ass so many times until this 21-minute Baron bait against G2. I think I've got a slightly special replay plan with a little bit of pause in there and vision. Talk me through why this was so good.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is them adapting from just starting the Baron when the enemy team is there. They have deeper vision, and obviously, G2 are aware that Baron is going to be started, but there's so much more space for T1 to utilize here to try and find and engage. And critically, they're not trapped in the pit. They're not getting melted down by the Baron, so it goes just far better.
Yeah, and what you can't see here, because we have the full vision toggle on, is the way that they're playing with fog, right? And kind of like, so they have to funnel in here. And yeah, there we go.
Can I also just say this is where the nightmare begins? You can play the rest of the clip out, and then I'm just going to hand over.
Oh, I love this. This was great. And, but I feel like the hilarious thing is if G2 had been watching all the games at T1, they probably would have assumed that T1 had started the Baron. You even see the Hex Gate come out, just completely past all of them, and that swift engage comes in. And we finally see a good T1 Baron.
And in addition to the Baron, which is obviously great, right? This is exactly what you want to see them doing. And I know, again, Chronicler and Atlas backstage are watching with us, and they're like, they're learning, they're evolving. I think the big thing for me was the way they played around Kumayushi on Felios. It was a lot more resemblant of what we saw from them in the LCK, with having him get down those early turrets, having them play around those early timers. And it was nice to see with a composition that then also had such massive team fight potential, because again, it's not like T1 can't 5v5. It's just that a lot of the times they've been going in with these super early game focused comps and haven't been able to stand up to the late game scaling of their opponents.
And of course, the production team just want to keep celebrating this win.
We can run it again if you want.
No, I really don't want to. I mean, it was fantastic. Great to see from T1. Painful from G2 now on the 4-game losing streak. And Law caught up with Oner after that victory over G2 in the Verizon post-game interview. Take it away.
And we are back in Busan for the first day of the Rumble stage, and T1 grabbed the victory against G2 today, and I have Oner with me to talk about this game. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
Thank you very much for joining me. We saw the player cameras at the end of the game. How important was this victory in terms of the team spirit?
네, 오늘 경기가 마무리되고 승리를 확정 지었을 때 선수분들의 개인 캠을 봤더니 정말 이번 경기에 대해서 많이 기뻐하는 걸 확인할 수 있었는데, 이번 경기 정말 팀적인 분위기, 사기에 있어서 얼마나 중요한 경기였나요?
일단 중요한 경기이기도 했지만 저희가 이지한테 약간 상대적인 약팀한테 졌었을 때 뭔가 너무 부담감이 다들 있었더라고요. 근데 그 패배로 인해 부담감을 떨치고 다 웃으면서 해가지고 스프링 때처럼 좀 잘 됐었던 것 같아요.
So yeah, of course, this one was really important, but I want to go back to that EG game because we were facing against relatively a weaker team. So we were playing under such a big pressure. And so after losing that one, we actually were able to get rid of all the pressure, and we were having so much fun in this game. We were just laughing, just like we did in the spring split. So we had a lot of fun.
That is very interesting. So would you say that with this game, you finally found your form in MSI?
그러면 이번 경기 승리를 통해서 드디어 최고의 폼을 좀 되찾은 것 같은 그런 느낌도 드나요?
저희가 스프링 때도 뭔가 조금 초반에 불리해도 무조건 이기겠다라는 생각이 들었었는데 이번 G2에서도 그런 생각이 들었었거든요. 그래서 저는 개인적으로는 지금부터는 진짜 다 박살낼 수 있다고 생각하고 있습니다.
So, I mean, in the spring split, we had this confidence that even when we were falling behind, we were just so confident that we were anyways going to end up winning the game. And in this game, we felt the same way for me. So I want to say, we are almost there, and I'm just so ready to crush other teams from now on.
All right. Well, talking about other teams, then I think the next one important on the list is going to be the rematch against RNG. What can you tell me about this matchup and your confidence into taking them down?
그러면 정말 남은 팀들 다 박살 내겠다고 했는데 남은 팀 중에 하나가 또 정말 중요한 RNG와의 리매치인데 얼마나 좀 자신 있으신지 어떻게 예상하시나요?
일단 RNG전도 그냥 다른 팀과 똑같이 그냥 충분히 너무 쉽게 이길 것 같아가지고 그냥 자신감은 저 포함해서 다 저희 팀 다 있는 것 같아서 충분히 이길 수 있다고 생각하고 있습니다.
I mean, RNG, just like other teams, I think it's going to be an easy win for us. And I feel like I'm so confident, so are my teammates. So, yeah, I'm just so ready for that.
I love the confidence here, Oner. 유튜브 감사합니다. 화이팅 하세요.
감사합니다.
Jisan, thank you so much for the translation. And you guys in Berlin, back to you.
Augs, pick your jaw back up off the floor. What was that about the last?
Just like other teams, it'll be an easy win. What easy wins have T1 had so far, man?
Oh, man.
It has been like constant fights to get this team to the point they are now, but I mean, I guess we'll see.
And also, if you are a G2 fan, you can thank EG for beating T1 to allow all of the stress to go away. But I mean, interesting interview, interesting perspective. Again, we're hearing the teams and the players talking a little bit about the domestic sort of mentality and shift. We still want to see a little bit more, some more adaptation. I think the draft specifically has been our crystal focus for today.
Yeah, I mean, the draft, and I think the Baron call that we talked through earlier, T1 came out of today looking, I would say I'm more confident in them now than when I watched them in previous days in terms of their play, even with the EG loss. And one thing I do want to reiterate that Oner kind of touched upon in that interview is that, like, this is a very fun team. Like, they like playing together. They enjoy playing together. A lot of their success, I think, domestically came from how much fun they were having just playing the game. If we can see that, you know, on stage with them being able to play without the pressure that I kind of talked about initially in our countdown, I think you're going to see a much scarier looking T1.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen them sort of learn a lot from the games they've had so far, and also it's good that they're sort of feeling a bit more of a lead from the pressure, because I think that was the point you made earlier, that going into Worlds, there wasn't nearly as much pressure on this team, right? There was a lot more focus on that one in particular, and then we had a situation where they outperformed maybe people's expectations, but here everyone was looking at this team to be the best team in the world, to stomp the tournament as they did the LCK, and then obviously that hasn't happened.
It's funny, in my head, I think even if they get scary, even if they get better, I still think there's a looseness to this version of T1 that's different from many previous versions. There's a funness, a willingness to be more scrappy, opting into things maybe they should not be opting into, that previous iterations would not have opted into, but it makes them very enjoyable, very entertaining to watch. And that is going to be part of the reason that our current standings look the way that they do. I mean, today, the day of upsets, the day of surprises. RNG 7-1, T1 5-3, and then we go down the list. So RNG is the only team locked into the knockout stage. They need one more win or one more T1 loss to guarantee them that first seed, and that will mean the choice of opponents. Now, Augs, I'm going to come to you as we have this on screen. Choice of opponents, expectations are here that EG and G2 will be that third and fourth seed. The expectation is T1 takes second, right?
Yeah, I think if RNG get first, most likely go for Evil Geniuses. We talked before about how Evil Genius are similar in some ways, and but RNG are a stronger team, so that should be an easier matchup for them. And honestly, as much as G2 have kind of, you know, fallen off since their 0-4 in the past couple of days, I still think they're a scary best of 5 team.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'd be pretty afraid of G2 in best of 5s. I also think, like, the other thing that we can't count out is that PSG do still have a little bit of an angle. Historically, I will say, as much as I obviously love this EG roster specifically, I'm never going to be the, like, NA rah-rah person. But with this roster and their composition and their coaching staff, I do really love them. Historically, North American teams haven't been the best at clinching their own spots, even when they've been in control of their own destiny. I can just think of the scenarios in my head, so I'm cautiously optimistic because I like a lot of the stuff I've seen out of them.
What makes me so nervous, because you're saying that from the EG perspective. For me, from the G2 perspective, they play Saigon Buffalo tomorrow. And I've been expecting a loss to Buffaloes on G2's
Look, Froggy is online. You gotta watch out.
Take a look
Froggy's
at the schedule. Take a look at the schedule here. And I think our stats team have given me a few one-liners here. Okay, so if EG beats PSG tomorrow, EG locks in the semifinals, okay? If G2 beat Buffalo, they will at least have a tiebreaker for knockouts. And then if G2 beat EG, G2 will lock knockouts. So those are kind of the 3 core matchups, at least for the, you know, LCS and AC teams tomorrow. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then obviously T1 RNG rematch at the end of the day. We'll see how that's going to play out for potential, you know, the expected finals. Today we kind of got fully reset back to the beginning. T1 RNG back on top. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, I feel like expectations, you know, definitely different to when we started the tournament, but things have, like, really shaken up. We have G2, the best team in the world, and now it's like,
worst team in the world.
Yeah, I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see, especially the rematch between them, because I think if T1 has learned and has still kept, like, their strong early game, which has typically been something RNG has struggled with, that could be a rough matchup, which is one of the reasons that coming into the tournament, I was kind of scared for RNG off T1, so a return to form could be problematic.
All right, safe to say 1, 2, 3, 4. RNG, T1, G2, EG.
No. Oh,
It's never safe to say.
It's never safe to
I'm
say.
not- I'm not
T1,
playing this
and then it'll
game.
be EG, PSG, just because that would
PSG,
be
right.
hilarious.
Okay, so, ladies, gentlemen, and everybody else, Aux is calling here. G2 get eliminated from knockouts tomorrow. That's his prediction. I want that stamped. I want it in a grayscale
my
photo. Let's see what
God.
happens. There's one more day of MSI 2022 Rumble stage ahead of us, and only one team locked in the knockout stage. Which 3 teams will follow RNG? You've just heard our discussion. Do remember, we start 2 hours earlier because of potential tiebreakers. That means countdown starts at 7:30 a.m. Grab your coffee, grab your bagels. We'll see you then. You seriously think they're going to drop out?
Matter of fact, we creeping, now we sneaking. Enemy highs, we be seeking. Lurk at the waters and bushes, oh man. Cool guys, we deepin'. All of you die, one at a time. Those are the facts, we don't throw dice. Ready